Really is fascinating how Donald Trump lives in these people's mind, is it not? I mean, just think about this for a minute. Just think. They have been convinced in 2016. They were absolutely fundamentally convinced that Russia stole the election for Donald Trump. In fact, they were convinced that Donald Trump couldn't get elected without the Russians' help, and that he was a Russian plant. In fact, it still comes up now. Even Bill Maher has started calling out the left for the mythology that Trump was some sort of Russian plant. So they were convinced in 2020, while Republicans were convinced 2020 was stolen, Democrats were convinced that 2020 was setting everything right, that the Russians had no longer interfered, it was legitimate, and clearly Republicans could never win again. Along comes 2024. Donald Trump not only wins a second term, but he wins with the popular vote. That was something the Democrats never even conceived of. In fact, the Democratic mythology had always been that Donald Trump could win, but if he or any other Republican won the presidency ever again, it would be because of the Electoral College, not the popular vote. And in Democratic states, they have systemically been trying to work to get rid of the Electoral College by binding states to the national popular vote. So it didn't matter if your state majority of the voters voted for a Republican. If the majority of the country voted Democrat, the Electoral College for your state would go to the Democrat, regardless of the votes of the people. And Democrats in Democratic states thought this was a great idea because the Democrats in Democratic states wanted to do what they could to rig the deck for the Democrats. And the Electoral College is seen as the last vestige of propping up Republicans, and they needed to get rid of it. Along comes Donald Trump, and he wins the popular vote in 2024. And notice, there's no narrative for the Democrats now, and this is very important. The narrative in 2000, when George W. Bush lost the popular vote and won, was, again, the Electoral College propping up the Republicans, and also that, don't worry about it, guys, demography's destiny, the GOP's days are done. In 2004, Bush wins the popular vote, wins the majority of the vote, and the narrative for the Democrats is that Ken Blackwell and Ohio stole it. There was some nefariousness there, and it wasn't really a legitimate loss. 2008, Obama gets elected, nature is healing. He gets reelected in 2012, proven nature is healing, Republicans will never win again. 2016, a Republican actually wins, but the Russians stole the election. 2020, Joe Biden wins, nature has healed. 2024, Donald Trump wins, majority or the plurality of the popular vote. They have no narrative that they're telling themselves or anyone else. They're not even trying to come up with a spin on 2024. To the extent they have one, it's blame Joe Biden, not their policies. And also it's the messaging. It's not the message, it's how they tell the message. That's the problem. There's always an excuse. The reality is that Donald Trump is in their head. He lives rent-free there. And Donald Trump, it's very easy for Donald Trump to bait the Democrats. Just look, he goes after illegal immigration, and the Democrats start defending illegal immigrants. They start defending the gangbangers and the murderers. You, by the way, individually listening can say I'm nut picking, and that's not true, but it is true. The Democratic Party has come out and repeatedly defended people. Just last week, a man in Washington, D.C. was pulled over and detained, pulled out of his vehicle. Members of the national press and members of Congress on the Democratic side attacked the Republicans for doing this. It turns out the man was a child predator and an illegal alien. Abrego Garcia, with purported ties to gangs in El Salvador. They're having a hearing on him today. The MS-13 guys and the Trinidad guys in the Aurora, Colorado complex. Remember, the media came out and said it wasn't true. Democrats said it wasn't true. 30 of them have just been indicted, 28 who lived in the apartment complex, 2 of them tied to the people in the apartment complex. And the Democrats are on their side. Time and time again, the Democrats take stands on the 20% side of issues with illegal immigration. Then there's Washington, D.C. and crime. They're defending the criminals. They're defending crime in the city. They're denying there's a problem. They put enormous resources into members of the press going on television claiming, I live in the D.C. area, which means not Washington, and there is no crime problem, when everyone knows there's a crime problem. And then there's redistricting. The Republicans have the smallest majority since the Great Depression in the House of Representatives. Republicans in Texas decided to redistrict. And the way the Republicans in Texas decided to redistrict was they actually took some Republican seats and made them less Republican to gain other seats. They're still pretty Republican if you assume the Hispanic vote stays with the Republicans, and I'm not really convinced on that. But if you assume it's all true and the Republicans hold their margins, yeah, the Republicans stand to pick up 5 more seats. But they could lose elsewhere. All of this was designed to provoke the Democrats to redistrict. Why do the Republicans want the Democrats to redistrict? Because, by the way, the Republicans in Washington want Gavin Newsom and the California Democrats to do what they're doing. They want them to. Why? Why on earth could Republicans want Gavin Newsom and the Democrats in California to wipe out the Republicans there? Because in Ohio and in Indiana, the Republican governors and Republican legislators are less than enthused about engaging in mid-decade redistricting. Donald Trump needs Ohio, Missouri, and Indiana in particular to redistrict. And with the exception of Missouri, Indiana and Ohio haven't been inclined to redistrict. But they said, if Gavin Newsom and the Democrats do it in California, we will do it. Gavin Newsom took the bait. Gavin Newsom is more interested in running for president than he is interested in helping the Democrats. Gavin Newsom is getting the buzz. He's starting to go up in the polling, and Donald Trump lives rent-free in his head. Gavin Newsom took the bait. Democrats are starting to realize Gavin Newsom has taken the debate. And by the way, you should know national Democratic strategists are okay with the surge in Gavin Newsom's polling popularity. Right now, Gavin Newsom leads the pack with about 30% of the vote. If the Democratic primary for president were tomorrow, who you'd vote for? Oh, he fights. He's fighting Trump. The Democratic strategists I've talked to, very senior strategists who you would know, are all very excited that Gavin Newsom is doing this because they hate him. They know that people hate him. They know that more people learn about him. He's not actually a shoo-in, and they're happy that he's flying so close to the sun because they think, and they will work to, blame Gavin Newsom for the redistricting troubles. This is Rick Klein talking about on ABC News the redistricting problems for the Democratic Party.
The fight for the House is almost certainly going to be the biggest thing on the ballot next year. You see how tight it is now. After some special elections, Democrats are actually going to close this gap even more, we think, and they only need to flip 3 seats in the midterms next year to win control of the House. So there's no guarantees, but he is definitely onto something. And in this nationwide war over redistricting, we've seen the 2 biggest states go first. The biggest red state, Texas. You mentioned those 5 additional seats.
Look at all that red.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of blue. They're squeezing that big time. Now, what we're seeing the opposite in California, where the Democrats under Gavin Newsom are putting a map on the ballot for voters this fall that could get them those 5 seats back. So that would make those 2 states.
Only 4 Republican seats, 48 for the Democrats if they pull it off.
If they were able to pull it off with the voters next year. And then, John, if you look at the other states that might still do redistricting this year, bottom line, it is advantage GOP. There are just more opportunities in places like Ohio, Indiana, Missouri, and Florida than there are in some of the big blue states like Illinois and Maryland. So at the end of this, it looks like Republicans are going to be able to squeeze just a little bit more juice out of these redistricting fights.
All because Gavin Newsom took the bait. 100% because Gavin Newsom took the bait. That's it. This is a massive ticking time bomb for the Democrats as well because of the 2030 reapportionment in the Electoral College. Everyone knows, including the Democrats, they know that there will be an Electoral College advantage for Republicans. This is from the New York Times today. The year is 2032. Studying the Electoral College map, a Democratic presidential candidate can no longer plan to sweep New Hampshire, Minnesota, and the blue wall battlegrounds of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin to win the White House. A victory in the swing state of Nevada won't help either. This is the nightmare scenario many Democratic Party insiders see playing out if current U.S. population projections hold. After every decennial census, like the one coming in 2030, congressional seats are reallocated among the states based on population shifts. Those seats, in turn, affect how big a prize each state is within the Electoral College, or how a candidate actually wins the presidency. In the next decade, the Electoral College will shift significantly away from Democrats. Deeply conservative Texas and Florida could gain a total of 5 congressional seats, and the red states of Utah and Idaho are each expected to add a seat. Those gains come at the expense of New York and California, according to New York Times analysis of population shifts. Midwestern states like Minnesota and Pennsylvania could lose a seat. Across all the possible scenarios in the 9 states that would be considered battlegrounds in 2032, Democrats would see a third of their current winning electoral college combination disappear if population projections hold. However, when looking only at the most feasible winning combinations based on voting patterns, the outlook is far worse. Of Democrats' 25 most plausible paths to victory in 2024, only 5 would remain. Some groups have arrived at an even more challenging outlook for Democrats in 2032. For example, the Brennan Center for Justice, a nonpartisan organization, liberal, projected Republicans to have 3 more safe seats from Texas and Florida, and New York to lose 1 more seat than the Times projection. The Democratic Party already faces acute challenges after its disastrous losses in 2024, including fundraising woes, an electorate that slid decidedly to the right, a vacuum in leadership, and a sharp decline in voter registrations. Y'all, the Democrats are not popular. Donald Trump is about to send the National Guard to blue cities and blue states. Chicago is next on the list. It's actually to help with deportations. It's not to fight crime, although they're going to put a lot of the National Guard troops in areas of high crime on the south side of Chicago and dare anyone to shoot at them. The governor of Illinois can't stop the president from doing this. And you're going to have the Democrats yet again on the side of illegal immigrants and crime combined on the south side of Chicago. It is notorious nationally, the south side of Chicago, for its violence, and you're going to have Democrats yet again defending it at a time they're not very popular. Now, here's the thing, Democrats. Here's your silver lining. Events change things. And the reality, the God's honest truth, is that Donald Trump's engagement in the economy with tariffs, with controls over companies like Intel, that could blow up in the Republicans' faces. Prices are starting to go up. Companies are starting to raise prices. If you got the show notes today, you can text Eric to 33777 and get the show notes. It's the top link. John Deere is starting to feel the impact of tariffs. They're raising prices. Walmart is now raising prices. Target is raising prices. Amazon is raising prices. If you get stuff shipped in from abroad, a lot of it's not going to come. The postal services of other countries, effective today, are no longer sending packages into this country because of the tariffs. You could have economic fallout that helps the Democrats. You really could. You could. But the Democrats are their own worst enemy because Donald Trump knows how to play them. They can't stay on an economic message, in large part because the Democrats are socialists. They can't argue about Donald Trump taking shares in Intel. They can't argue about tariffs because, it's actually tax increases, and the Democrats like tax increases. And then they're on the side of the criminals. They're on the side of the illegal aliens. Unless Democrats can figure out how to play Trump, he's playing them like a fiddle. And he just baited Gavin Newsom into handing Republicans control of the House of Representatives for the next 15 years. Republicans in Indiana and Ohio, they were not going to redistrict, and now they're going to because of California. Trump keeps playing the Democrats masterfully, putting them on the 20% side of 80-20 issues. And there seems to be no Democrat out there who has figured out yet how to respond in a way that stops them from coming out on the side of crazy.